Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today I'm sharing my Commodore 64 memories. So, alright, if you watch this video, or if you follow me on Twitter, or you look at my face, you know I'm poor. And I've always been poor. I've had more money than other times in my life. I've had more money than other times. But for the most part, I've been lower class my whole life. So I did not get a computer when y'all did. My first computer, I was born in 1982, so put this in your head. I got my first computer in 1996. My first computer was an Atari 800 XL. And this was not a toy that my dad bought me. This was not some leftover thing he had as a kid that he passed down to me. No, this was my computer. Like, I wanted a computer, and my parents couldn't afford a real one. So they found this at a Goodwill or a yard sale or wherever. And this was my computer in 1996 when I was like 13, 14 years old. So I had the tape deck, I had the floppy disk drive, I had it had the cartridge slot, I had cartridges, you know, I had to get on the computer with the instruction book and read, how to program it, and learning basic because the goddamn thing ran on basic because that was fucking it. That was the OS. There was no OS. Not really. This was before operating systems were even a fucking thing. Um, I mean, technically, but we're brushing over that. So yeah, I couldn't do shit with this goddamn thing. I couldn't do shit. I could play fucking Missile Command, but I already had an Atari 2600 that could play Missile Command. So what the fuck? I didn't need this thing. This thing was fucking useless. But I didn't give a shit. I was just happy as shit to have a computer. I would sit and type on it. Even though I didn't have a printer and I couldn't save what I typed, I would just sit and journal. I would just sit and type, you know, write stories or songs or poems or whatever. Just sit and just fucking tinker, you know. And a year later, my grandma bought a. She was at a thrift store. She bought a Commodore 64, complete with all monitor, all the bells and whistles. The touchpad, the joystick, both two floppy drives, the tape drive, all kinds of shit. The printer, the modem, fucking everything. And she got a Commodore 128, and she set them up in her house because I lived with my grandma at the time, and she let me play with this computer. Well, in I want to say 98, she bought a new computer, a brand new from the store, like Windows, fucking Pentium processor, a real legit proper computer. And so she gave me her Commodore 64. She didn't give me the 128. She said I could have whichever one I wanted, and I took the 64. So at 16 years old, I'm learning how to computer in school, Windows 95, you know, Microsoft Office 97 or whatever it was. Um fucking, AOL, fucking Yahoo email, Yahoo chat room, fucking, primitive fucking computers, but state of the art at the time. And then I'm going home to fucking push buttons on a Commodore 64. By this time, I had already sold my Atari computer and all of its accessories um, to a pawn shop, got rid of it, because now I had the Commodore, which was a better computer. Better, more powerful, yeah, sure, if it was 1984, but we're talking 1998. It was fucking a joke. It was a goddamn joke. But I learned how to computer on this thing. I learned how to, format a floppy disk. I learned how to move files from floppy disk to, to the memory to load it up into the RAM. I learned how to boot up the GEOS operating system, GEOS. Um, I learned how to, program in BASIC, do animations and make music and just random shit. And I would save things, save my programs or whatever to the cassette tape, which took fucking ages, or to the floppy disk, which again, I was limited. I only had a handful of floppy disks I had to reuse because they didn't fucking make them anymore. I couldn't just go to, Radio Shack or Sears or wherever they sold floppy disks in 1998 and buy new floppy, because the floppy disks they were selling in stores at the time, because they were compatible, were the 3 3/4 inch floppy disks that were compatible with Windows 95, Windows 98 computers. They were not the 5 1/4 inch or 5 1/2 inch or whatever the fuck. I'm getting my numbers wrong. I don't give a fuck. You know, discs that fit into the Commodore drive, and they weren't for, you know what I mean. So it was like I had like a handful of discs, and that was it. I couldn't. I had to be caught. I had to be very careful with my space. Um, so I learned how to program in BASIC. I got pretty proficient at it because I sat there with fucking nothing else to do. You know, go to school and learn how to, draw in MS Paint, and then go home and have to recreate what I drew on MS Paint with a mouse, pixel by pixel on a graph paper on my Commodore 64, which was kind of intriguing in a way, but also incredibly frustrating because it was like I just wanted a real goddamn computer. And I was so pissed off that we were so poor we couldn't afford a real fucking computer, you know? And uh, I have mixed feelings about the Commodore 64. Yes, I have nostalgia for the goddamn thing, but I have wonky nostalgia that is misplaced. And that gives me mixed feelings, which also gives me animosity towards it. Because it was like, in 1998, I should have had a Pentium 2, you know, uh, fucking Voodoo Graphics, fucking CD-ROM, fucking, you know, Windows 98 or Windows 95, fucking, computer. That's what I should have had in 1998, not a goddamn Commodore 64. Um, but what the fuck was I gonna do? We were goddamn poor and we couldn't afford a real computer. Um, I would finally get a step closer to a real computer 1 year later. In 1999, my dad brought home a computer from work that was a 386 DOS pre Windows 3.1. This was a DOS 386 Sound Blaster piece of shit, but it was, at least it was, IBM compatible. It was, at least it was DOS. So I could still play games on it, proper games. Duke Nukem, not Duke Nukem 3D, but side-scrolling Duke Nukem. I could still play. It couldn't run Jazz Jackrabbit; it wasn't fast enough, but it could play, Commander Keen. It could play Pac-Man, and some other games I was able to pirate, and don't ask me how. But it didn't do much. It was another one, it didn't really fucking do much because it was a fucking primitive piece of shit. I wouldn't get my first real proper computer, like modern, like current computer, until the year 2000. My great grandma passed away, and she left a bunch of money to my grandma, and my grandma bought us, the family, a computer for the family. It was a compact Presario with a Pentium 2, Windows 98 second edition. I believe it was like 64 megabytes of RAM, CD-ROM. It wasn't a great computer. Didn't even have a graphics card built in. I had to buy a graphics card to upgrade it. I had to buy a Sound Blaster. I had to buy, a gamepad card, to be able to hook up game controllers, etc. It wasn't a great computer, but it was still, and well, at least it was a real fucking computer. You know, So what I did with my Commodore 64 was I programmed an animation of a guy walking across the street. That was it. He took up the full screen. It refreshed the screen 3 times and then crashed because I ran out of RAM because goddamn thing had no fucking RAM. And I didn't know how to manage the memory because I'm learning how to program on a fucking Commodore 64 when I should be learning how to program fucking C++ on a fucking iMac. Anyways, it is what it is. So, do I have fond memories of the Commodore 64? No, I do not. I have nostalgic memories of the Commodore 64 because I had one as a kid, as a teenager. But I had one anachronistically, I guess is the word. I shouldn't have had one when I did. If I was going to have a Commodore 64, I should have had it when I was 6, not when I was 16.